This video is going to cover the topic of creating a dividing fraction algorithm. Be sure you put the date at the top as well as the topic. The essential question of this video is, what rule can we create to multiply fractions? Just as we did with multiplying fractions, we want to see if we can come up with an algorithm. Remember that an algorithm is a mathematical rule or strategy that we can use. To create this algorithm, we're going to need something, a term in math that we call the reciprocal. The reciprocal is the name of a fraction that you get when you reverse the numerator and the denominator. For example, the reciprocal of 2/3 would be 3/2. What we want to know also about a reciprocal is that if you multiply the two together, the original fraction and the reciprocal, you will always get 1. 3 times 2 is 6. 3 times 2 is 6. You will always get a product of 1. So that's something we need to keep in mind as we work on creating this algorithm, right? The key word is going to be reciprocal. Hopefully you remember that we had a question in an earlier video that was about 3 friends sharing 2/3 of a pound of popcorn. And we had a number sentence that represented that story problem as 2/3 divided by 3. And we worked through that and we found out that when we had 2/3 divided by 3, each friend was getting 2/9 of a pound of popcorn. But we also stopped and saw that that was kind of like our multiplication model, our Brownie model. And that's going to be important here as we work through creating an algorithm. We said that this was basically the same as 2/3 times 1/3, because we were kind of thinking of it as everyone taking a third of the popcorn, right? And that also worked out to be 2/9. When I look at these two number sentences, I want to kind of come up with a connection between them. And I notice that their first number in the number sentence is the same, 2/3. The second number is not the same, and of course the operation went from division to multiplication. But their answer in the end was the same. And if I take a look at this now, thinking about my new term reciprocal, maybe I can find another connection. It might not be immediately obvious, but if I do this and I say 3 is the same as 3 wholes, you might notice now that I have 2 fractions and they are the reciprocal of each other, right? We have 3/1 and we have 1/3. We've reversed the numerator and the denominator. I'm going to keep that in mind as I look at another example from an earlier question in an earlier video lesson. We had 3/4 divided by 1/4. And when we did that, we were trying to figure out how many hair ties I could make with 3/4 of a yard of ribbon. And I found that I was able to make 3 because 1/4 fit into 3/4 3 times. Let me look at this now and see if I do 3/4 and I use my reciprocal and I change this to 4/1, and instead of dividing I multiply, I'm going to get 12/4, but that again will get me to 3. Right? So I actually went through the steps that I did on just our previous question to see if I would get a similar result. I have the same first number, right? And I have taken the reciprocal of the second fraction, and I have turned my division question into a multiplication question. And I got the same answer. This is going to be the key to our algorithm. So here we're going to outline the steps of the algorithm for dividing fractions. The first thing we do is keep our first fraction the same. So in the number sentence 3/4 divided by 1/4, we're going to keep the 3/4 just as it is. Step 2, we're going to use the reciprocal of the divisor. So again, in our example, we had 3/4 divided by 4. We're now going to use the reciprocal and make it 4/1. So we have the opposite fraction, essentially. Right? Now for step 3, since we have the opposite fraction, we're going to do an opposite operation. Whereas this started as a division problem, since we have done the opposite fraction, we're going to now do the opposite operation, and we're going to multiply. From there, you'll just follow your multiplication algorithm. So I'll do 3 times 4 is 12, 4 times 1 is 4, and simplify to get 3. Those are our steps for our algorithm. Let me do an example all the way through just to check how it works. In an earlier video, we had 6 divided by 3/4. So I'm just going to go through my steps here of my new algorithm. I'm going to keep my first fraction the same. Of course, 6 right now isn't a fraction, but I can make it one by just saying 6 wholes. I'm going to change my 3/4 into the reciprocal, 4/3, and I'm going to change to multiplication. 6 times 4 is 24. 1 times 3 is 3. I can simplify that to 8. And I remember that's the answer we got when we did this with a model in an earlier video. So it worked. Let's go ahead and have you try one. So I'm just going to do 3/5 divided by 1/2. So we want to see how many halves there are in 3/5. So take a moment to pause, follow our steps of our algorithm, and we'll see how we do. And keep in mind that your answer might be a whole number, as it was up here, but it might also be a fraction. How'd you do? I found out that there was 1 1/5 halves that fits into 3/5. So 3/5 divided by 1/2 is 1 1/5. For your turn, go ahead and solve 2/7 divided by 1/3. Use the algorithm and do your best to try to solve this one. Remember, the essential question was what rule can we use to divide fractions? And of course, we will practice this more in class together.